And good evening. Welcome to the Mayor and City Council meeting for the City of Taneytown for September 2021. We'll begin with our pledge to the flag, and I'll ask Councilwoman Fuller to please lead us in the pledge.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let the records reflect that all council members are present and accounted for this evening. We'll begin the evening with approval of the minutes. This is for the August 4th and August 9th regular meetings. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Oh, thank you.
I have a second, please.
Second?
Very good. We have the motion from Councilwoman Foster and second from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti. Are there any discussion amendments? Anyone have any heartburn about the minutes? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of the August 4th and August 9th regular meetings signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed, say nay. Thank you. I'll now ask the council if they have any conflicts of interest on anything on the agenda this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. With no one conflicted, we shall move on. Up for introduction this evening, we have Ordinance 05-2021. This is the amendment to the Community Village Zone. I'll entertain a motion to introduce.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Very good. We have the motion from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, the second from Councilwoman Foster. Is there any discussion on the introduction of the amendment? Okay, if all are satisfied, upon the introduction this evening, it will be up then for approval next month. All in favor of introducing Ordinance 05-2021 Amendment to Community Village Zone signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed may say nay. All right. Up for adoption this evening, we have Ordinance 06-2021. This is the final budget amendment for fiscal year 2021. I'll entertain a motion, and please specify your motion.
Motion to approve the final budget amendment for fiscal year 2021.
Very good. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
With the motion from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, the second from Councilwoman Fuller, I'll open up for discussion on Ordinance 06-2021. Okay, all are satisfied? With that, all in favor of adopting Ordinance 06-2021 fiscal year 2021 final budget amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed may say nay. All right. I'll be seeking similar for Ordinance 07-2021. This is Budget Amendment number 1 for fiscal year 2022. I'll entertain a motion, and please specify.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Very good. With a motion from Councilman Haines, second from Councilman Hand, I'll open the floor to discussion from the council. All right, everyone seems satisfied. So with that, all in favor of adopting Ordinance 07-2021 fiscal year 2022 budget amendment number 1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. Up next is our monthly water allocation. This is Resolution 2021-16, water allocation for September 2021. We do this each month. I'll entertain a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
With a motion from Councilwoman Fuller, second from Councilwoman Foster, I'll open the floor to discussion from council. All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving Resolution 2021-16, water allocation for September 2021, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. Now, up for adoption this evening, listed for adoption, is Resolution 2021-17 Community Development Block Grant. I'm going to request that there are things in this resolution we have not done yet, per specifically the public hearings that are required. We do have a tight timetable. I believe we anticipate doing a public hearing, the workshop of next month. The request from staff is that council authorize myself as mayor to execute this upon fulfilling all the requirements. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Wieprecht?
Legal review.
And legal review, yes, thank you. So with that, I will entertain a motion to authorize myself as mayor to execute this pending those items.
So moved.
And do I have a second, please?
Second.
With the motion from Councilman Haines and the second from Councilman Hand, I'll open it up for discussion. This is really the first you've seen this resolution. It was brought forward from Mr. Mishi, our Economic Development Director, Wednesday evening. He gave a presentation on the benefits of the Community Development Block Grant and the impact it can have on covering projects for low to moderate income residents of the city.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. And
Go ahead.
perhaps Councilman Haines can answer this because he's the Economic Development Liaison. Under the, I guess it would be the fifth item down, it talks about the Community Development Block Grant funds in the amount of $100,000 for the following projects, but no projects are listed. I was wondering if there are any projects that are intended to be pursued or if that is something that is going to be decided in time.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but I think right now the most likely decision is something on the capital improvement program. So there's a water retention problem behind Grand Drive where Kenny's is, and I think the CIP quotes that at 80 grand, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the most likely scenario, but I'm sure that there's others that can be discussed, and maybe Jim can help me out with that.
Right, that's definitely the idea. There's also this possibility that we may conduct a study of that area. That portion of the city lies relatively flat, and we have a lot of issues with conveying stormwater from there to Trevanian Road. So CDM has in the past talked about possibly doing a study of a regional study for that part of the city. So that's something that if we move forward with the community block development grants, that sort of study could be covered by that as well. But the immediate thought is to add some storm drain inlets in the area and try to get the flow away from people's yards and the easement areas.
Thank you very much, both of you.
So have we applied for this grant yet?
No, this is basically all of the things we need to do to enable us to apply. It's kind of setting the stage for this by agreeing that we will use the monies for things that are benefit for primarily low and moderate income individuals in the city. So we are kind of limited as to what we will be able to apply for. And we only had a couple things in the capital improvement program in the draft that really would serve that core population. So things that are citywide we don't qualify for, but there are pockets within the city that have a higher percentage of low to moderate income individuals. So things that we apply for that funding need to benefit that demographic.
I believe the number was 70%
Yes,
of those impacted have to be LMI, or low to moderate income residents.
that's correct.
So they talked about, Mr. Mishi talked about the survey that would go out to identify that. Is that going to be just in a localized area, or will it be citywide?
That will be localized.
Okay. Is there a way that we can do something citywide to help us planning for the future to identify those areas that are concentrated?
Through the state data center, that information is available to us. We often go through the Department of Housing and Community Development to get that demographic information, so that is available to us without having to do our own survey.
Okay. I'm kind of envisioning some sort of heat map that we can look at and identify pockets that show up as LMI eligible. So if we have that, that'll help us plan for the future and hopefully not be at the last minute like these.
Certainly.
Any other questions from council?
So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
will be executing this after the public hearing?
After the public hearing and after legal review. I believe those are the only two contingencies we currently
Yes.
have.
And if I recall from Mr. Mishi's presentation, the urgency really is to have these things in place, have the hearing scheduled uh, before the application deadline. I don't know if we can wait for the mayor's signature until after the hearing, so it may be something, and this is why we really need to consult with the city attorney. If the city attorney advises that it's acceptable to execute the resolution with the hearing still pending, but putting in the dates that it's been
But
advertised.
scheduled, right.
Right, then we move forward, but I don't want to do that without the city attorney's
I agree.
opinion on the matter.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely on a tight deadline. I believe the due date is October, I think I heard 9th at some point. That might not,
October 8th.
8th.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say, I thought it was the 8th.
Yeah. So it is a tight deadline. So pending those, the approval from the city attorney, I can execute this with the council's approval this evening.
Correct. And I would like to add, and this applies to what's farther down on the agenda under new business as well, that passing this resolution and approving the other policy documents related to the community block development grants sets the stage for us to be able to apply not just this year, but these policies and the resolution are good for a 5-year period. So in the event that we are not able to flesh out a stormwater-related project in time to get the application in, at least we've done the groundwork to be able to apply for the next round. So we don't have to go through this every year in order to apply. We realize this is a big time crunch. Mr. Mishi just became aware of the deadlines and all the requirements within the last month or so.
Yeah, because this is a very comprehensive
Yeah.
document here. I definitely would not want the mayor signing this without legal.
Yes.
Well,
approval.
of course,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
And right, with the attorney being out of action for the moment, we haven't been able to get things past him yet.
Okay.
Should we amend the original motion to include legal review, or is that inherent in the original?
I think it was
intention?
included
Was-
in the
okay.
original. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion from the council? All right. All in favor of approving for myself to execute this resolution upon review of the city attorney, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right. With that, we'll go back to Mr. Wieprecht. Do you have any updates for your city manager report this evening, sir?
Nothing additional, thank you.
All right. Do we have any questions for the city manager on his report or the departmental reports as they are presented to you? All right. City Attorney, Mr. Gullo, is not with us this evening. We will skip over. Our next order of business is our new business. Up for approval this evening is a monthly financial report, and I will entertain a motion to approve, if you see fit.
So move to approve the monthly financial report?
Second.
Very good. With a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti and a second from Councilwoman Foster to approve the monthly financial report, I'd like to ask if there's any comments from the council. All right, no discussion to be had. With that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, I will ask the same of the accounts payables. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second, please.
Second.
I have the motion from Councilman Haines, second from Councilwoman Fuller to approve the accounts payables. I'll open up for discussion. Anyone from council wish to discuss? Very good. If all are satisfied, I'll open to the vote. All in favor of approving the accounts payables signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. Next, we have seeking approval for the Fifth Amendment to the amended and restated Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement for Meads Crossing. If I remember correctly, this is pertaining mostly to sheds. Is that correct, Mr. Wieprecht? And if you recall, Wednesday evening, we did hold a public hearing to this effect, essentially outlining that they, through their HOA, can allow sheds. And they did have, does this speak to the size limitations, or is that going to be more in our code, Mr. Wieprecht?
This does include the size limitation.
Which was 120
120
square feet,
square feet.
correct? Very good. I will entertain a motion, and please specify your motion.
Is it too late to share an item to discuss?
We're going to have a motion first before we discuss.
Motion to approve the Fifth Amendment to the amended and restated Development Rights and Responsibilities Agreement for Meads Crossing.
And do I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti and a second from Councilwoman Foster, and I will now open it up for discussion. Councilman Hand, do you want to start?
So, my general concern, I expressed it at the Planning Commission meeting at the end of last month and then during the workshop, is that 120 square feet, although one can envision that as a 10 by 12, doesn't seem so large. A lot of the land parcels that the individual family homes are resting upon are much smaller than, let's say, the neighboring Meadowbrook neighborhood. And a lot of the topography of the backyards is at a rather steep grade. And so just seeking to envision 120 square feet on at least 50% of those lots seems like it would put them either pretty much near or at the back of the house. Seems like visually it would potentially be rather cluttered with the common backyards with the steep grades, especially Burnside and Sherman, the parallel roads to Crimson. So I just wanted to put that out there, maybe something less than 120 for this particular amendment, maybe an 8 by 10 of 80. I understand through the HOA that there were some, don't know how many exactly, that expressed a want to have a shed in terms of being able to put items so they could still use garage space for at least one vehicle. So I get that. But my concern, once again, is the relative size to the lot. And when I'm thinking about a community village and the aesthetic and the intimacy that goes along with that, and this being the Fifth Amendment, I'm just wondering, you know, at what point is the vision of a community village compromised too far?
If you were to ask my opinion, which I'll share now, I think the vision for a community village in Taneytown has been compromised to the greatest extent possible at this point. Very little of what is community village in the city really adheres to the ordinance. I think a total rewrite of the ordinance would not be out of the question, in my opinion. So what I'll ask of you is, do you wish to offer an amendment to this, modifying that size?
I would, yes.
Okay. Can you put that in the form of an amendment?
And so would that be merely I move to amend the current motion on the floor to limit to 80 square feet?
Very good. An amendment has been offered to amend, we'll say, item B1, changing it from 120 square feet in area to 80 square feet in area. I'll begin by asking the original maker of the motion, Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, if he wishes to incorporate that in his motion. Or do you wish to take them separately?
I guess I'd like more information first. I mean, I'm not quite sure of the procedure at this point. I mean, is it a point of order? Is it do I have to accept the amendment in order to be able to discuss it at that point?
If you choose to not accept the amendment as part of your motion, I'll put that up for a separate vote. So what we would do is vote on the amendment first. If it passes, then we will vote on the amended motion.
So I'm going to respectfully decline the amendment just for the sake of discussion. And I guess my principal question is how, I mean, originally, from what I am aware of, the initial square footage for sheds was larger than the 120 that it was reduced to. And I guess the question that I have is, how did we arrive at the 120 square feet versus the 80 feet before that? So I mean, why is 120 the suggested size, given the status of the state of community village, the size of the yards, that sort of thing?
Well, and I think we can ask that of perhaps city staff. Ms. Wieprecht, you have an explanation for why 120 square feet was chosen?
That was at the developer's request.
Developer's request.
The city's stance on that, or my stance as the former zoning administrator, was just that they be small enough that they not require a Carroll County building permit, because that's an additional step, an additional bit of work that we weren't expecting with a community village. So that was our tipping point. So anything under 150 square feet of floor area doesn't require that extra step.
Okay. So I'm going to open it up still to the council to discuss the amendment being offered. Not the original motion, but the amendment.
If I might add something, can you clarify why 80 is a suitable number just a little bit more? I know you've explained it, and I don't mean to make it seem as if that's gone over my head, but from what I understand, like most sheds on average are 150 to 200 square feet. And so if 120 is just sufficient to house something like, you know, lawn equipment or a snow blower or what have you, I mean, are we kind of crippling what people can put in their sheds at 80 square feet, or no?
Well, let's begin. I don't know that 150 to 200 square feet is really that common for a shed.
I mean, that's just...
Right. I mean, not in city limits. I mean, and I say that I have a 32 square foot shed.
Okay.
But
Like I said, I'm not a shed expert. I just want to know, like,
Right,
kind of
yeah.
echoing what Joe said, the developer requested 120, so if we push it down to 80, are we screwing people over? I mean, are there people that are going to be upset?
well, let's be frank. Right now, they can't have any.
Okay,
That's
fair.
Let's start there. Our community village ordinance says you cannot have sheds in community village.
Sure.
So anything is an improvement, in my opinion, for them.
And so walk me through this one more time, because I know we discussed this, if not Wednesday night, I know we had mentioned this briefly at our previous meeting. The homeowners association of a community can be more restrictive than what the city allows.
That's correct.
So even if we were to say, okay, we will allow these 120 square foot sheds, the homeowners association can say, well, we really don't like the 120 foot and we want to make them 80 feet. So that is possible that within that, you know, smaller locale than ours, they can say, we do want to be more restrictive.
That's a good point.
That's correct. They can be more restrictive, but if we say 80, they cannot say 120, in theory. They can choose the battle they wish to take.
And my concern, or my thoughts would be, why bother calling something a community village if it's just like any other large Levittown like plot of land that you can do whatever you want with?
Preach it.
I mean, originally, the townhomes, which I very much appreciate, the idea was to not have driveways, so that the aesthetic looking down the street would be, you would see, you know, that very nice, well thought out staggered fronts for the Bob Ward homes. And then there'd be a common alley behind, so that's where the vehicles would go. That's where, I mean, there could be a garage type shed thing in the back, and that's where the garbage cans would be as well. So that's a community village, you know, drive down near Wegmans, and that's what you would see is the common alley where everything is, and then you see a landscaped front without cars breaking up the line. So that's my thought behind this. And you know, I've been approached in kind of a, I don't think it was met as a negative, but, you know, we'll be thankful that, you know, it's not 150. Well, no, if you currently have nothing, then don't seek to strong arm verbally to say 150, just be thankful that it's not 150, it's 120. The whole point is, I want integrity in what a community village is.
Right. And I think, and I say this with all respect to any developers that may be in the room, I believe when they seek to use community village, they're not looking at it from the aesthetic point, they're looking at it from a density point, because it allows them to put that much higher density in that area, which of course is more profitable for them, and that's great. But at the same time, aesthetically speaking, you know, there have been so many revisions to it that none of those aesthetics really exist, with the exception of being able to have both townhomes and single family in the same development. You know, we could accomplish very similar with an R6000, you know, which we have on the books. It's similar density, probably the same density in an R6000. And as we've discussed before, and I'm kind of getting off the rails at this point, you look at any homeowner in Carol Vista or Meats Crossing, when they look at a map, as far as they know, they're in R10,000. So if they look at our code, they think everything R10,000 applies to them. It doesn't even specify the community village overlay that actually applies. That's a lot of the confusion that I see going on with all of this. But that's a sidetrack on that. It's not the original idea. So what we'll do, is there any further discussion on the amendment?
I just wanted to say it to Councilman Haines, honestly, I would like a smaller than 80.
Okay.
So I was trying to be nice to the 120.
I mean, that's fair. And I guess the only question I would have at that point is, does the desire for sheds maybe come from a buyer's misconception, wherein people that go in to buy townhomes or just any home in a community village like this one, maybe don't realize that that's what they're getting into up front? I mean, a lot of people will see these listings online, whoever they want to, they want to buy a home first. The whole notion of a community village, and that's where I'm settling down in, kind of comes second, I feel like, for a lot of people. Maybe I'm wrong there. And so you have someone who buys their home, they get in there and like, well, I want to put a shed in my yard. And then they're realizing after the fact that they've kind of gotten into this community village. Is that fair, or?
Well,
I hear what you're
let's,
saying, and I would
Okay.
say they
Cal
should have read
Vista
the
has
100,
the same problem.
Okay.
they should have read the 120-page HOA document or watched the DVD, then stick it in and read it, because that's what I was told was, this is your responsibility to
Sure.
know this. And then if a salesperson didn't bring that up, then I would say better training for the salespeople.
Sure.
for the sake of clarity, first off, what we are permitting is sheds in single-family homes. It would still not permit them in townhomes. Is that correct, Mr. Wieprecht?
Correct.
Very good. Secondly, when people bought in Meads Crossing, they were told they could have sheds by the salesperson.
Oh,
And I say that as someone who looked at and had a contract on a house.
That's
And on
right.
the first view was told, and the backyard's plenty big for a shed. And I said, but you can't have them here. Yeah, you can.
okay.
So when they're told incorrect information and expecting that they can have it because their HOA says so, which is not what the city says.
Right.
So their expectation is now different. And that's where we land ourselves today.
Okay.
May I ask, and if anybody knows this, 'cause I'm personally not aware, what is the status of the HOA out there? I mean, is it formed, is it forming, is it have to
It
wait to a
is-
certain population?
It has to wait until a certain percentage of the units are sold. It's correct. It's currently in the hands of the developers. And I think once they reach 75%, then it will hand on to the community itself. But of course, they will be given the documents that have already been created, and then it's up to them to modify and do what they wish with them.
I'm sorry, and because I missed the discussion on Wednesday, I know in listening, you guys were talking about the setbacks. Would those setbacks actually create the scenario where they, and I guess, are you more opposed to any of the large shed structures, or just how it fits in those backyards that maybe are not?
I personally don't think a large, let's say 150 shed,
Right.
would go on any of those parcels of land size-wise. I mean, I'm fortunate in that I'm ambulatory, I'm bipedal, I don't need a lawnmower, riding lawnmower, but I don't think many people would need a riding lawnmower for those parcels. So, and it goes back to when we discussed it some time ago in the Planning Commission. There was a gentleman there that was concerned about equitability. I mean, some of those yards, because they have a larger front, let's say like the ones that back up to the asphalt nature trail.
Okay.
It seems like those yards are only like 25 feet deep, and then it goes into the common space. So setbacks alone, like if you're 10 feet off the property line, I don't even know if that would work for those homes. So it just seems by the nature of home placements that varies. I don't know what percent could have, and then maybe those that could, it specifies it has to be on flat. And so if you have, let's say, a 3.5-foot differential from the front to the back, that's going to be a tremendous amount of, I don't know, terracing, reinforcing, buildup. And I mean, if people want to put the money to do that, let's say they could. Once again,
Right. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Lee, if you could bring
Speaking
your,
to, I'm sorry.
bring your microphone closer to you. I just want to make sure it can get picked up.
Okay.
Um, Okay, let's, further discussion on the amendment. Councilwoman Fuller, I believe you still have the
Well,
floor.
and that's it. And I guess the other thing was that obviously they all still have to come to get the permits before they can do anything.
Right, a shed would require a zoning certificate.
So at that point, I mean, do we have more of a say in, you know, saying you only have this much space, so don't,
The code requires a shed not exceed more than 30% of the required rear yard, which of course is then not defined in the code. We have a minimum rear yard setback, but not a volume. So typically, what we do is if there's, and generally, yards are large enough that it's not a question. You know, it's even a 200 square foot shed in the R10,000 district, usually there's no question. It's nowhere near a third of the backyard. So generally, it's a non-issue. With a really small lot, it could be. In some townhouse areas, you know, we've had a few sheds, but again, a third of the backyard would be proportionally a very big shed. I would not want to venture a guess as to 120 square feet versus the volume of some of the backyards in Meads. So it's possible that it might arise, but I think it would be very few lots that it would be that close. So
I think there were a handful of lots that received setback exceptions for decks because the rear yards were so small. Am I correct in
that is
that?
correct, yes. Now, a deck would be subject to a different setback requirement than a shed.
Right, but how does
So-
that affect
Right.
available property for a shed?
And certainly if someone may have to choose between a large deck or having a shed. They may not be able to have both.
Or having a
and-
120 square foot shed or a 32 square foot shed, depending on what will actually fit in the yard. So I guess what I'm asking council to consider is this the fight we need to have? 120 square foot versus 80 foot? Do we feel that it is so dense there that having up to 120 square feet will negatively impact the aesthetics of the neighborhood?
And I would want to leave that question up to the prospective HOA. I feel like it's our role as the city to allow access to the shed if that's what they want, and then the HOA can flesh out the aesthetics. I feel like that's their role. I feel like we're kind of overstepping just a little bit here, but I see the merit in it, but that's just how I feel.
Right, and I won't go as far as say we're overstepping. I'm also,
Maybe not
where you're
overstepping.
coming from, understand that the developer as the HOA at this point are the ones asking for the 120 square feet. So until, I can promise you that no HOA in the future is going to lower that. I can tell you that.
And
Mr.
if I
Wieprecht.
could, I realized as we've been having this discussion and after we had the motion and vote to introduce the amendment to community village zone, that is the actual enabling language that allows the DARA modification. So we are actually going to have to hold this until next month. The timing of this is very odd because we've seen it at the Planning Commission twice now. So I'm not sure, I guess the first viewing with the Planning Commission must have been prior to it being vetted before the City Council. So we don't have, until we adopt Ordinance 5, 2021, we don't have the
This isn't
enabling
in play.
language.
Right.
Right, so we really should hold off on this for another month. And I apologize, that did not register until we were talking about it this evening, that we have to pass that ordinance before we can do the DARA amendment.
Okay, so at this point, as a point of order, I'm going to remove all motions from the floor. So there is nothing to be approved this evening, but I do appreciate and welcome the conversation we're having in hopes that it will also go forward to the planning commissions, that they can hear council's opinions on it as well. So I'm not going to stop discussion, but I am removing all motions from the floor.
So on that note, let me ask, because I'm in agreement with Councilman Haines, as, we mentioned a little earlier too, that, the HOA can be more restrictive than whatever guidelines are set by the city. And going off of something that Councilwoman Fuller said a little while ago, is there a way, I don't know whether it would be mathematical or whatever the case is, would be to construct some kind of formula that would permit a shed based on some percentage of the available space? Would that be too complicated? Would that be, Would that be
Probably
more-
have
be in-
that.
I would not be in favor of that. That's a lot of extra gymnastics to
complicated.
go through for administering it.
That was my one it came through the planning commission twice now. So the first time I had asked if there could be some sort of algorithm for that. And so then the sheds were tabled because developers brought forth designs the planning commission wanted to see. And the vinyl designs do match, the homes. And so that was that, and now it came to us,
Okay.
kind of.
Thank you.
All right, last chance for discussion before I close the discussion. Any additional input from members of council? Very good. So this evening, Mr. Wieprecht, based on the information you've given us, we're not seeking any decision whatsoever. Is that correct?
Correct. We need to have the enabling language passed first.
Okay. That enabling language being Ordinance
ordinance.
05-2021 that we introduced this evening.
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to Hail Mary this down the road and take it up again next month. All right. For clarification to the city clerk, go ahead and make mention in the minutes of the motions originally, and then make mention of my striking all motions on the floor based on that information. Is that sounds good? Thank you. Next, I'm going to come before council and request that they allow me to reappoint Mr. William Bill Kennedy to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. His term expires this year. He has expressed an interest to continue. I think he's done an outstanding job on that board. I believe the chair, as well as our Parks and Rec director, are very pleased with what he's done on the board, so I ask the council to approve that, and I will seek a motion accordingly.
So, no, go ahead, Judith,
I was
please.
just saying, a motion to approve the continuation of Bill Kennedy to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
And do I have a second, please?
Second?
Very good. With the motion from Councilwoman Fuller, second from Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, allowing me to reappoint Bill Kennedy to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Thank you. Next, we have the ratification of special event permit approval for Gettysburg Youth Soccer Club. This was an event that has already taken place. It was approved by staff, and I gave it preliminary approval and is coming to you simply to ratify as a matter of procedure. My understanding is it a very successful event. The parks were left in very good shape. As you imagine with all parks, parking was a little sketchy, but we made it through, and a lot of kids had a lot of fun. So I'm going to seek a motion to ratify this permit.
Motion to, oh, I'm sorry, no, please go ahead.
Very good. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
I love it when they fight. All right, we do have the motion from Councilwoman Foster, and I'm awarding the second to Councilman Hand. Is there any discussion on the ratification of the permit? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. Lastly, for new business, we have a policy approval for the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. Mr. Wieprecht, I'm going to have you speak before I seek a motion.
Yes. And just as we did with the resolution, this would be pending the city attorney's review and approval. So again, this is the rest of the suite of documents that enable us to apply for funding.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to seek a similar motion, which would be authorizing myself as mayor to execute this upon review by the city attorney.
So moved.
Very good. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion for Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, and I'm handing the second to Councilwoman Foster. Any discussion on this topic, policy approval? Okay. All in favor of empowering myself as mayor to execute the policy approval for community development block grant pending review from the city attorney, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. We're down to our council member reports, and I will begin with Councilman Haines.
So I don't have too much to report this month. We did have the business breakfast, and that was incredibly successful, full house. We honored Nancy McCormick there, gave her the sign that we all discussed colors of and everything like that. She was over encumbered. It was really incredible to see her and how thankful she was for that. On a personal note, yesterday, Officer Sakadelis and I did the Mercy Run to Remember 5K down in Baltimore, and that was great. Really incredible seeing that many people come together for an event like that. But other than that, nothing else to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Foster, do you have anything for us this evening?
Yes, as a member of the Board of Directors of the MML, I attended our yearly retreat, which took place the 8th through the 10th in Salisbury, Maryland. It was a very good retreat, and of particular note, we had legislative representatives from the House of Delegates. And it was supposed to be more of a presentation, but it actually ended up consuming a large part of that day, and we skipped stuff because they addressed specific questions that board members had and shared information and resources. And that information centered a lot around police reform and COVID and the mandates. So it was a very, very good retreat. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman. Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the Taneytown Police Departmental Report for August 2021. To begin with, annual in-service training is currently occurring through Police One Academy. The officers are learning about traffic stops and safety in 5 one-hour blocks and best practices in dangerous canine encounters. Supervisors are taking leadership blocks and leadership in law enforcement, as well as generational differences for law enforcement. All members attended a 4-hour training block from Judy Buchanan, who is a licensed unbeatable mind coach, resiliency educator, civilian instructor. Topics included mental toughness, stress management, and resiliency. And it is important to note that all mandated officers have met or exceeded minimum required in-service training hours for the 2021 calendar year. Moving on to the rest of the departmental report, the total number of dispatched or generated calls for service in August were 449. The total number of citations issued were 131. The total number of warnings issued, 110. The total number of adult arrests were 18. The total number of juvenile arrests were 2. As far as community outreach is concerned, as everybody knows, on August 3rd, the Taneytown Police Department participated in National Night Out. The police department would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who came out and participated that night and helped to make the event a big success. Of special note, I want to thank Chief Etzler, Major Mitchell, Officers Romero and Chesney for attending and participating in Taneytown's September 11th Memorial Service this past Saturday, as well as the Taneytown Volunteer Fire Company. We also want to extend thanks to Mayor Wentz, Councilman Haines, Senator Reedy, Delegate Shoemaker, Reverend Baker, Delegate Rose, New Windsor Mayor Andy Green, and other residents for being there as well. Additionally, we want to thank Parks and Recreation Director Lorena Vicari, Mayor Wentz again, and the Public Works Department for actually putting the event together, making it happen. And then I have a few very brief words on speaking only for myself, not for the department. You know, I do believe that it matters that small towns and counties commemorate September 11th because what happened that day still resonates so deeply in the national consciousness and in world events. Even locally, the effects are still felt in our hearts. The bravery and heroism amid terrorism and tragedy remind us that all of us can make a difference in our lives, even in small ways. There is no fate that we are bound to, and only the choices that we make. We have to prove that what happened that day mattered in how we live. We owe it to those who are no longer with us. We owe it to each other. We owe it to God for the gift of life He has given us. Every moment is a new chance for us because we are Americans. And so it's right that we reflect on September 11th and what that has meant for us as a people, and the renewal that it must always inspire us to seek. And that's it for me this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilwoman Fuller, do you have anything for us this evening?
I do. We did cancel our August 11th meeting because we didn't have any pressing agenda items. We had two individuals who were on vacations. Our next meeting is going to be on September 15th at about 6:30. The Athletic Association will be meeting before the actual Parks and Rec meeting. The months of September and October, there's going to be a parks photography contest. There's going to be 3 categories: scenic, which is nature shots; action, which would include sports and activities; and play, children using the playgrounds. The prizes will be awarded for the top pictures in each category, and they'll be judged by the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Photos will be used for marketing and publicity, with the credit giving to the photographers accordingly. And we're very excited. There's more information, I believe, on the Facebook page. So if you're interested, you can go there. The Harvest Fest is coming up next month on October 9th. So I want everybody to be able to plan ahead and put it on your calendar. It's from 11 to 3. Poison Whiskey is going to be performing, and there's going to be a beer garden set up on the tennis court with flood zone, serving up autumn ales. There's going to be craft vendors, food trucks, fall-themed games and festivities. And of course, there's going to be other events in October, including the pet parade, pet contest, or pet costume contest. That's October 30th from 3 to 5 at Memorial Park. And then we'll have our Nightmare on Main Street Children's Parade and the trunk or treat event at the fire department's carnival grounds. And that starts at 5:30 p.m. So all that information will be on the Parks and Rec Facebook page, just so you can put it on your calendar now, and I'll mention it again in October.
What time does the Fall Fest start?
The Fall Fest starts at 11. Yes.
11 to 3.
11 to 3.
I can't wait.
All right, Councilwoman. Councilman Hand, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just a few items. The Taneytown Baptist Church received a thumbs up from the Planning Commission for a pavilion on site. FP Duffy Box and Recycling, south of town on 194. They're just beginning their process of looking into another building, so they have an engineer that will be proposing some items down the road. Let's see, at the Taneytown High School Park, there are some sheds that are on the sad side when it comes to their structural integrity. Of the 3, 2 will be put down. 1 will be moved to Roberts Mill, and they're going to get a new one for the items that help out storing things there. Another item we talked about this evening quite a bit, Meads Crossing Dara. And then to wrap things up for the month of August, there were 15 new home certificates, 13 in Meads and 3 in Meadowbrook. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. I had to laugh at your referring to a shed as being put down. That was
It happens.
Past time.
busy. What a vast difference from a year ago when nothing was happening and no one was going anywhere. Things are happening. I'm excited by that. I'll start with some of the things that I've been involved in. On September 1st, I did attend the MML Legislative Committee meeting. I'm serving on that board yet again this year. There we learned about all of the, what they call LARs, the items that municipalities have submitted for us to consider as possibly being priorities for MML to support. They were all explained in detail. Since then, the members of the Legislative Committee have kind of voted on which ones they think are important to them. And this Wednesday morning, we'll have another meeting where we actually choose what are the legislative priorities for MML. Some more information on that coming later. We did have on August 27th a city worker picnic, which was a lot of fun down at Memorial Park. Had all the city employees down there, just enjoying some lunch, some time together, and some cornhole. It was a great day, a lot of fun, and then the storm came. And by storm, I mean actual storm, like rain and lightning and such, not something worse. This past Saturday, on September 11th, as Mayor Pro Tem Vigliotti talked about, we did have a ceremony in the morning at Memorial Park at our war memorial. It was very well attended. It was a beautiful ceremony. I thank everyone who came, who attended, and those who participated by speaking. I thank the fire department for coming out with their apparatus, as well as their people. Our police department was well represented. And I think it's important, especially after 20 years, that we continue to recognize the bravery of those that day and all the lives that were lost. We also had this past Saturday the Relay for Life dinner, kind of a modified event for them. They couldn't really do their walk, but they did a car parade around the city, and then they met back at the Legion for dinner. And I was very honored that they asked me to come speak to them. And I want to remind council that this Thursday evening, if you RSVP'd, we do have our MML chapter meeting in Westminster, social time starting at 6:30, dinner and business meeting at 7 o'clock. So if you did RSVP, I hope to see you there. And I believe that's all I have for you this evening. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Very good. With a motion from Councilman Haines, second from Councilwoman Fuller to adjourn for the evening. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you for attending this evening, everyone.